hey, let's chat a little bit about the ribs. And we'll start with the upper part of the rib cage. This was really a big thing for me. So I really struggled with shoulder stability and with breath for a long time and could never figure out what was going on. I had been a yogi for years, over a decade, and I just I was kept getting hurt. I just felt stuck in my practice, and I didn't feel strong, and I don't like it when I don't feel strong. So that was a struggle for me. So I started to kind of break down my body and figure out, where is it going wrong? Like, what's happening? Why can't I get to where I want to be and where I know I can be, right? So I started to figure things out, and it was interesting that it came down to two things: my posture and my breath. So once I realized that I was breathing improperly every moment of every day, and that my posture was creating really bad patterns that were hurting me. And what I mean by hurting me was I didn't have access to muscle. I was creating like knots and tight fascia within the body, and it was changing my bones, the shape of my bones, the structure of my bones, and then I didn't have access to my breath. So I was in pretty bad shape for a long time, and I just kept like beating yoga into my body, thinking like, one day it'll all work, right? This is how this works, right? So once I kind of figured out what was going on, I started to put it all together. And this is what I want to share with y'all through Electric Lotus and what I'm creating here. So stick around, there's a lot to come. So I'm going to start my first talk today is going to be about the upper rib cage. Now, from my experience, because I'll only teach from my experience in my body, what was happening to me is I was living long time, like long time, like a long time, in states of panic and fear. And so what that does structurally in the body is it collapses through the front and the back. So you suck your air in, you hold your breath, and this is the shape, right? So my body adjusted to my panic and my fear because I was in that state for such a long period of time. It started to take that shape, right, of my fear and panic. So then what that did was it started to flatten between the front and the back, which then flattened through here. The ribs, the actual bones started to collapse and flatten. So I started to kind of press out here and flatten here, which then I lost all access to these muscles. I lost access to the pecs. My pecs started to harden and tighten. It started to stretch out across my back and wing that scapula, and then I would get knots in there. And then I started to get so much pain in around this part of my arm. And then my arms would fall asleep, right? So some things that I figured out was this collapsing of the rib cage was then pressing down on the nerves, right? The nerves that come through the parasympathetic nervous system, through the chest, through the heart, and to the diaphragm. So now I'm pressing on those nerves, which then is keeping me, I'm already like sucked in and pressurized in panic and fear, and now it's collapsing onto those nerves, keeping that connection disconnected. So now I'm not in a good nervous system flow. I'm all broken up and frazzled, and I can't breathe, and there's a lot of disconnection here. So I'm frozen, right? I'm literally frozen in fear and panic, and it shaped my body, the bones. Okay, so once I kind of figured that out, I was like, okay, well, how do I fix all this, right? So one, I had to figure out how to breathe in the state that my body is in, right? I can't change the shape of my body. So I have to figure out how to breathe full diaphragmatic breath when my body is in this shape, which was so hard to figure out. But I did, and we can have a class on that, and we will. So once I kind of figured that out, and I started to reshape my rib cage, which we will also work on. So I started to reshape my rib cage, understand diaphragmatic breath, and then building the muscles to hold the new structure. So I need my muscles to hold the rib cage in the new structure that it is, in the new architecture of that rib cage. And so this has been the main focus of Electric Lotus and my work and what I want to bring to everyone. So that is just the upper body. Once I get into the low ribs and the diaphragm, you will just be like, oh my God, posture literally is everything. I promise. Okay. So let's move on to the second part of this, which is flared ribs. So I'll have to find pictures, but you can kind of see a little bit of the shape of my rib cage, right? And you can really see the arch in my back, and then I have the tendency to press through in my hips. So let me show you how this works, right? So what would happen was I'm in this state of panic, right? So I'm collapsing here, holding my breath, but then down here, I'm bracing, right? For impact, for emotional and psychological impact, usually centered around chronic shame, right? So now from up here, I'm fear, panicked, and down here, I'm pressing out and bearing down, right? In chronic shame, right? Just bracing down, bracing for impact, to be shamed, ashamed, bullied, somebody's going to attack me, pressing out. So what did that do? It pressed my rib cage out. So I'm already flat, pressing here in panic. Now it's trying to force my rib cage out. So my ribs literally started to curl up. No joke. No joke. I'll get pictures, I promise. So curled up, and my diaphragm pressed down and outside my rib cage. And it just stayed there, right? Because that was my shape. That was my permanent shape. Panic and fear of being ashamed and shamed, and just that emotional and that psychological warfare, terrorism going on, right? So now that's dropped down, and I can't access my breath. I'm stuck in an exhale. So I can't even inhale up into my ribs to get my ribs back into place. It's just stuck down here. Well, I had no access to breath, and I couldn't get through any of my postures, my workouts. I can't calm myself, right? Because my breath is stuck in this exhale, and I'm not able to relieve the vagus nerve, right? So that was phase oh shit, number 2, right? So I had to start to work on this area of the body. And what I've learned through this process, which we'll have a class on, is what the hell was happening in my hips. Now, this is where things get really hard, because in my hips, I was born with a form of hip dysplasia. And so the heads of my femurs weren't ever fully set in my hip, my hip girdle, right? And they could pop out a little bit and pop back in and pop back out and pop back in. And so I had a baby, and so I'm in this panic state, pushing out and bearing down, right? So it's pushing out through my hips, which my hips are already unstable and popping out of the socket. Now we're pushing out through the pubic bone and the hips, trying to bear down and whoa, 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 stop, 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 kind of a stance, And so then I have children and stuff, and baby number 1 really changed my hip girdle, and I was struggling with my hips after that. Baby number 2 actually dislocated my hips and tore the labrum on the left side. So I had to have surgery there. So I decided then that I was going to figure out how to build the muscles around the hips to bring that right hip back into the socket. And then here we are. So all of this is together about how we can start to connect and reshape the structure of our posture, of our bones, hydrate and move through the fascia in the movement, and really start to build the muscles to hold that alignment, the architecture of our body, all while we're figuring out how to breathe. So yeah, this is Electric Lotus. This is my work. And this is what I'm here to share. So stand by, find my classes in town, and we'll be having classes online, and just stick with it. Just stick with it. Like if it's working, stick with it. If it's not working, get rid of it. And that's just kind of how it's worked for me in trying to figure this out. And it is a journey. So let's do it together, you know? Let's be a team. Let's be on that team shit. Same team, right?